Welcome to today's program, Abdu'l-Bahá, Vegetarian and Unity in the Bahá'í Faith. Abdu'l-Bahá was the eldest son of Baha'u'llah. Along with Baha'u'llah and the Bab, Abdu'l-Bahá, who staunchly persevered and worked towards the realization of his father's mission, was canonized as the last of the three central authoritative figures of the Bahá'í Faith. Today, Abdu'l-Bahā's discourses and writings continue to serve as a source of Bahá'í sacred literature. Abdu'l-Bahá was born with the name Abbas in Tehran in 1844 on the night of Bab declared his mission. Besides a year of preparatory school, at age 7, Abdu'l-Bahá received no formal education. He also contracted tuberculosis when he was 7 years old, and although recovered, he was periodically subjected to bouts of illness throughout his life. Taught mostly by his father, Baha'u'llah Abdu'l-Bahá was so well learned that the renowned British translator Professor Edward Granville Brown wrote,
"One more eloquent of speech, more ready of argument, more apt of illustration, more intimately acquainted with the sacred books of the Jews, the Christians, the Mohammedans, could, I should think, scarcely be found even amongst the eloquent, ready and subtle race to which he belongs."
A life-changing event occurred in 1852 when Baha'u'llah was incarcerated as a Babi. Abdu'l-Bahá was 8 years old at the time, and he and his family had to endure deprivation, mistreatment, and the pain of separating from his beloved father. The image of his father's suffering while in detainment left an indelible imprint during his formative years. When Baha'u'llah was set free 4 months later, he was exiled and left Iran, never to return again. He and his family made the long journey to Baghdad. Without suitable clothing nor provisions, the punishing 3-month trek in the midst of a severe winter took its toll. 9-year-old Abdu'l-Bahá suffered frostbite along the way and sadly had to part with his baby brother, who was unable to travel with them due to ill health. Baha'u'llah went into seclusion in the mountains of Kurdistan shortly after they arrived in Baghdad and didn't return until some 2 years later when Abdu'l-Bahá had turned 12. Despite his youthful age, Abdu'l-Bahá intuitively recognized his father's station in life, and in the ensuing years he became his father's representative, spokesman, and secretary. During their time in exile, he took on the responsibility of looking after the family and of negotiating with government officials. He safeguarded his father from undue intrusions and the ill intents of people. He held conversations with the wise and sought to understand their thoughts and mindsets. By then, though very young, he had begun to demonstrate his intellectual prowess and mastery of language. In Akka, the final destination of their exile, Abdu'l-Bahá was ever his father's protector and guard. In managing his father's affairs, he always held his ground, holding firm on matters of justice and in his dealings with hostile city officials. He also often showed love and humility, his selfless spirit intending to the unwell and the needy eventually won over even the most hardened adversaries. Let's take time now to reflect on these words penned by Abdu'l-Bahá. The purpose of man's creation is unity and harmony, not discord and separateness. We will return shortly here on Supreme Master Television. Welcome back to Abdu'l-Bahá, Vegetarian and Unity in the Bahá'í Faith. At 48 years of age, Abdu'l-Bahá, whose name translates to mean servant of the glory, succeeded his father Baha'u'llah, who passed on in 1892 and officially became the authorized interpreter of his father's writings. A prolific author himself, as well as an advocate of world peace, racial harmony, and social justice, Abdu'l-Bahá wrote hundreds of books and treatises. Amongst these are The Secret of Divine Civilization, A Traveler's Narrative, and Memorials of the Faithful. The publications of his speeches are included in books such as Promulgation of Universal Peace, Selected Writings of Abdu'l-Bahá, Some Answered Questions, plus others. For embracing the teachings of Baha'u'llah, Abdu'l-Bahá was detained from 1868 to 1908. 40 years of detainment did not change him nor erode his ideals. A being of nobility with an abiding love for people of all creeds and status, Abdu'l-Bahá selflessly devoted his life to the service of others, particularly the deprived, the underprivileged, and the homeless. He was 64 when he was freed, without a formal education, social status, nor power, and unfamiliar with modern ways. He amazingly proceeded to promote the Bahá'í teachings to the West by journeying to Europe and North America. In 1910, Abdu'l-Bahá traveled to Egypt. This was his first excursion abroad. There, various Egyptian news outlets gave him positive coverage. About a year later, at 67 years old, Abdu'l-Bahá made his way to France and Great Britain for the purpose of supporting Western Bahá'í communities and disseminating the teachings. This was followed by an 8-month tour of North America. He held talks and conducted interviews in cities across the United States and in Montreal, Canada. Abdu'l-Bahá set the Western world alight wherever he went. His speeches in the United States of America attracted huge audiences and received widespread media coverage. He articulated his father's word-embracing vision. He emphasized the oneness of God, the oneness of religion, and the oneness of humanity. He spoke about the commonalities of faith across all religions and that the world's ills can be addressed from a spiritual standpoint. God repeatedly delivers his message to humanity in all the great faiths, stating that one should transcend the self and become selfless. Abdu'l-Bahá advocated ending racial inequality and violence of all kinds and supported the complete liberation of women. He stood for world peace through global governance and insisted that unless religion becomes the cause of love and unity among all people, humankind may face extinction. The unity of humanity can be realized when we ignore the selfish promptings of our lower nature and substitute it with the selfless promptings of our higher nature. To illustrate this, Abdu'l-Bahá quoted an example. According to him, the nature of man, being selfish, was to always strive after the good life. We ate, we slept, we sang, we danced. We had no fear of God, no hope of heaven. We liked what we were doing. We had our own way. In contrast, the journey to the selfless state as upheld by the prophets is described. You were content to stay in the animal world. We wanted to make you human beings. You were dark. We wanted you illumined, alive, and heavenly. Abdu'l-Bahá made a great impression in the US. 3 days after his arrival, the press had good things to report. The Evening Mail's editor wrote,
"A side idea of Abdul's is that things modern are just as good as things ancient. This makes the white-bearded and snowy turbaned leader exactly as much at home on Broadway in New York as he was in the lonely cell at Acre."
In Abdu'l-Bahá's first public talk in the US at New York's Greenwich Village, he found that material civilization has progressed greatly in this country, but spiritual civilization has been left behind. 2 weeks later, he was in Chicago laying the cornerstone for a temple to be built at Lake Michigan. During his tour of the West, Abdu'l-Bahá met and interacted with famous personalities and leaders, among which were the inventor Alexander Graham Bell, industrialist and humanitarian Andrew Carnegie, Arctic explorer Admiral Robert Peary, Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore, and Lebanese poet and venerated enlightened master Khalil Gibran, to name just a few. Author Dr. Alan L. Ward voiced the unique nature of Abdu'l-Bahá's North America trip by writing,
"Never before, during the formative years of a religion, has a figure of like stature made a journey of such magnitude in a setting so different from that of his native land."
Abdu'l-Bahá was knighted by the British government on April 27, 1920, for his humanitarian work averting famine in Palestine with his program to feed the less fortunate. Throughout his remarkable life, Abdu'l-Bahá epitomized the virtues of selflessness and service to humanity. He set up the Bahá'í administrative order to promulgate the faith. 10,000 people attended his funeral at the time of his passing in 1921. We thank God for blessing our planet with such great souls as Abdu'l-Bahá, whose timeless teachings uplift and guide countless people on their spiritual paths. For more information on Abdu'l-Bahá, please visit Bahá'í.org. Luminescent viewers, it's been a pleasure to have your company today.